Game on.
Hey, Drunken Master Paul here. If you like a smooth bourbon and some fine retro gaming, then you want to watch Glen's Retro Show on YouTube. I know I do, and you should too. Cheers.
Howdy, buddy. Thank you for joining me on today's edition of Glen's Retro Show. Today I thought I'd do something a little bit different. I've been doing a lot of review videos and also videos on my controllers I'm coming out with, but I haven't gone back to my roots in a while, and that basically means it's just modifying things, taking some old parts I had laying around and making something new out of it. Now, I have a 3D printer. I've had it a couple of years, and haven't really dabbled in it too much, but lately I have been. I've been doing a lot of things on Thingiverse, getting things to download and print. My buddy Wagner at Wagner's Tech Talk has the OpenCade, but he actually sent me those. I didn't print them myself. He sent them because I wasn't too good with the printing. But as of lately, I've been messing around doing a lot of printing, and I thought I would actually get a stab at actually designing something. 3D printers are great when you download and print something, but the real fun of 3D printers is when you design something yourself and see it come to life. Now, I'm not very good with woodworking, never was, and I didn't think I'd be good at 3D design either, but I thought I'd give it a shot, and here's why. Recently I did a review here of the Legends Flashback with the new firmware they have on there that lets you basically use a QR code to upload high scores. So I've been kind of getting into now these leaderboards and putting my scores up there, mostly on Asteroids, which I'm one of my favorite games. I'm pretty good at it. But one of the things about this little guy right here is the games are good. I mean, it's fun, it's entertaining, I like it. What I didn't like was the design. I just didn't care for the case it was in. Now, I'm pretty sure it was just a case they reused on a couple of their flashbacks. I think they had a couple of Sega flashbacks. It was the same type of turtle shell type of design. And that's what this was here. And I started thinking about it. I'm like, it's such a fun system. And it's a shame they didn't take it to the next level. I mean, I understand why for cost reasons they use the same case. But I said, I wonder if I could actually 3D print something and make it look a little bit better. I had a lot of ideas going through my head. And it started really complicated. And I started realizing, if I'm going to be designing this myself, I probably shouldn't start at the top. Maybe I start a little simple. So I thought about, what can I do? Well, by looking at the design, it kind of reminded me of maybe an arcade cocktail cabinet. So that's what I thought I would give a shot today on Glen's Retro Show, using my 3D printer. And well, let's see how I did it and kind of how it turned out. Let's get started. Okay, it's another bright and sunny day out here, so I'm actually recording this again on my front porch. So if you hear any noises, it's because I'm enjoying some of the nice weather as I'm making this video. So we can see here's the Legends Flashback, the design of the unit. And if I'm not mistaken, they've used this design a couple of times before, for I think a couple of their Sega flashbacks. They had a cartridge port up here, or very similar to it. Just a very basic design. And here's another shot of it, just to give you an idea of the size of the unit. And the games, I enjoy the machine itself. I enjoy the games on here. They have a new firmware, which I did a video on recently, that lets you, upload firmware, download the firmware, and then you can upload high scores to their leaderboard, which is a really nice feature thing to have. So I'm getting a lot more playing on it. But the more and more I looked at the unit, I mean, it's fine, but I just thought, for all these great games that are on here, it was kind of an injustice to put it in just such a plain case like this. I mean, you can see here we got, we have the two joystick ports in the front, we have power, we have a menu button, HDMI, micro USB, and an SD card slot. So it has all the things you need, but for the arcade and console games on here, it just seemed like it was a miss to me, like they could have did something a little bit better. So as I looked at it more and more, I started thinking, maybe I can make this into like a big cabinet, like an arcade cabinet. But the more I thought about that, I'm like, you know what, I'm not really good at 3D design yet, so it might be something simpler, and that'd be a cocktail tabletop. So you can see right here on the bottom there are 4 screw holes, and I designed this leg to basically take out the rubber feet and put these in the 2 spots where the screws are. So you make 2 of these legs to go on the bottom of the unit, and then here is my original version 1 design of the top. See, I made a control panel each side with a joystick and buttons, which was a real pain in the butt to do, and it's still not right. But again, this is my first time trying anything in 3D design, and this is a program called Tinkercade, which gives you basic shapes, and then you just kind of use them in different ways to try and make what you want. And it's from someone like me, just starting out, this is fine. But the biggest problem I had was here, because originally my thought was, well, my original thought was building like a stand-up arcade, and that was just got too complicated. So I thought a cocktail. But then originally was going to make just a cover that just slides over the original case design. And no matter what I did, I couldn't get this right. I measured it, and the measurements were right, or at least I believe they were right. But I could never get this to sit on there properly. So this eventually changed a little bit. So here's the original design. I mean, this size was perfect. This size was perfect. No matter what I did with this archway, I just couldn't get it right. Even though I measured it in the same way as the other two, I couldn't get that archway right. And then I decided, you know, I was just going to make a cutout, but not really a true cutout, just like a divot. Because I was going to put a decal in here, like a Donkey Kong Jr. or Donkey Kong, and put some artwork on here. The original design wasn't to put a screen in here. It was really just to make it look like a nicer case. So here you go. Here's my Anycubic i3 Mega with its Ultra Base. What's nice about the Ultra Base here, it's a glass bed with these divots. So when it heats up and starts laying down the PLA, it sticks in those divots, and as it cools and contracts, it pops the PLA or the plastic design you made, it pops off. This is my first trying printing out one of the legs here. And it took about an hour for this whole thing to go. This was just my very, very first time just seeing if I was even close, remote. Because again, I've never done this before. And I think I'd give it a try. So this was actually 57 minutes. And now, PLA usually doesn't require any temperature to adhere. But on mine, for some reason, I do need it. I had it way too high here. It was at 91C. You can see it lifted here a little bit because of it, because it warped it. I found now that about 50C is the right temperature where this will stick, yet not warp. So this was just my first, again, just see if it fit. And you can see it did fit. Now you see it's bowed here a little bit. Part of that is because of that extra heat. But I did want it bowed a little bit because I wanted pressure here and here. So when you pick the machine up, the legs didn't fall out. I don't want you to glue it in. I didn't want you to have to tape it in. I just wanted it to stay on its own. So I just made it so you actually had to bend it in a smidgen. And it works great. I mean, it locks in place. It does not fall out unless you physically, pull on it to take it out. And so that worked out pretty well. And you can see it's nice and smooth on the bottom because that's where it is on the glass base. And my idea was starting to come to fruition, and I said, you know what, maybe I can do this. The leg came out pretty good. I'm going to redesign it a little bit, little changes. Now, in a real cocktail table, a real cocktail table, there's usually one leg that comes down the middle, and then it comes out sideways. But I didn't want to put PLA up here just to go in here, and then one leg come down. Because I also didn't think it was going to be as stable, being the PLA. So here it's rock solid. It doesn't look bad. It still gives you the basic idea of a cocktail table. And I think it looks pretty good. Here's where I start having most of my issues. See, first of all, the printout a problem just making a small divot. I had to end up cleaning this all out. So I just wanted to put a decal in here. And you can see the archway is way too low. Even though I measured it, it wasn't even close to the right archway here. So, I tried a couple more times. I couldn't get it right, so I decided to kind of change how I was going to make this. The original thought was really just put this lid on here, make it look like a cocktail table, and be done with it. And just, have it sit up there and looks better than the clam shell or turtle shell design they had. You can see I'm way too high here, even though I measured it. I just think that this archway, you can see mine is less. Theirs is much more, and I measured from here to here when I made my archway, so it should be right, but obviously it is not even close. And just a blurry side angle. My cell phone really stinks. It's a Motorola G7, and yeah, it's not a very good camera, so new cell phones at some point. And also you can see here, I did make the control panel, and I use Cura here, and Cura seems to make its standoffs way too hard to come off. I think the other program I use, which is Simplify 3D, does a much better job of this, but I thought I'd give this one a try. It just really didn't give very good quality printout on it, so I was a little disappointed using the original slicer. Now here, I decided I'm just going to cut this out, because I had a screen. This is a 4.3 inch screen, so I just did a basic cutout. I wasn't going to use this one anyway, so I figured if I ruin it, it's not a big deal. So I did cut this just to see if it's the right size, and I did, but then I found out I had this screen about a year, bought it brand new, never used it, tried it, doesn't work. There's something wrong with the processor on here. The display is all messed up. So fortunately, I didn't have another 4.3 inch. I did have a 3.5 inch screen, and that would work. So I ended up having to redo this anyway for a smaller screen. But again, you can see it's just I was just way off. So again, first time trying 3D software designing. So this one's a miss, but that's okay. The PLA is not expensive. That was maybe $1 worth of PLA there, so it's not a huge waste out of the spool. But I did just cut it out, just to get an idea. Now, by doing a screen in here now, that means that the Legends Flashback lid cannot stay here because the screen is going to take up more room. And unless you want this thing to be 4 feet tall, I know I'm being a little ridiculous, but really, really tall, it wouldn't look like a cocktail table if you made it really, really tall in the middle. It's got to look proportional. So this lid's going to have to come off. And that will kind of simplify some things. Again, my basic idea, just trying things out. The control panel here is going to have to come much lower. It's up way too high. So just little ideas of seeing how things fit and make some changes. So here is, again, the original unit. It looks almost like a Santa sleigh. So you could do that for Christmas time. Make a little sleigh and put that on here as well. But the legs I thought came out really good. This is just going to be my nemesis. So I decided to rethink it. And again, this is basically all the basic parts you would need. You got the Legends Flashback, the 3D printed legs, a top, a screen, and then of course I went on to speakers and other things. So as you work on these things, you go, oh, how about this? Oh, how about this? And your small project starts to become big. Even though I tried to simplify it from my original concept, it's slowly expanding out like the universe, and it's getting to be more and more complex and bigger. Here's just another shot. You can see the legs. Now I put these little NP Sonic. Some of the arcade machines like Space Invader, remember, had these little things in the end here. So again, just trying it out. So here is my version, I guess, 2 lid. And it was mostly a success. I used a lower temperature. So my lid here did not warp in any way, shape, or form. It's nice and flat. The cut hole for the 3.5 inch screen is perfect. See, I took the lid out. You can see the insides, but it's necessary to put in the screen. But I did have another issue, which since I was trying this again, I measured, it didn't come out too right. I'll show you that in a second. But here's the LED spot for the LED. That fits in here just nice. Everything else here turned out really, really good. Here was my problem. These were not in the right position. This had to move over. This one had to really move over. And again, I measured it. It's why I shouldn't be designing houses and stuff like that. Because I can measure 5 times and it looks perfect, but I do it and it's wrong. So that's how things happen on Glen's Retro Show. But in any case, the rest of it turned out pretty well. So I was kind of happy. I just had to move these over, and it shouldn't have been a big deal. And you can see in the back, I actually designed this cutout that so you can get your micro USB, HDMI, and your SD card slot. Now, this became a problem a little bit later. I'll discuss in a second. But you can see it slides over just nice, fits perfectly. It's not too tight, not too loose. It sits over it just nice on the original bottom of the unit. Now, my original concept was I was going to take the guts out, make a whole new thing. But then I started looking at it again, like, man, that's a little too complicated for my first try. So I'm going to leave the bottom. I'll just put a top on it and go from there. And here's a 3.5 inch screen. It's just held in with Scotch tape. It was just to make sure that I have the basic size right. And I do, even though it looks like it's a little bit off. You can see the Scotch tape right there. It kind of fell down a little bit. But the screen will fit here. The problem was that there is a connector on the bottom here that would go to a Raspberry Pi. So I'll show you that in a second. I had to actually cut that down quite a bit because it was hitting the DB9 connector here. So that had to come off. Wasn't a huge deal, but just something I had to do. Now here's the version 3, or maybe version 1.3, I should really say. It's still all version 1. So version 1.3 of the lid. You see I moved the control joysticks down much lower from the top here. I got these centered much better. You can see it hangs down. It probably could have been a little bit shorter just to make it flow a little bit better, but it doesn't look bad. The problem I had was on the back. When I made this new cut hole, I apparently cut off and blocked on the back where the SD card is. So I'll show you that in a second. That was, you don't pay attention. But you can see the control panel here. It's dark. I had to put some, ink on here to lighten it up a little bit. But maybe I'm going to put some LEDs in here. I don't know. Maybe there's always room for improvement. And here's a nice other blurry picture of the joysticks. My camera really does stink. So here's a shot from the top with the lid on it. You can see when you put the screen in here, there's no room at the top for that screen to go in. So I decided just to take this out. I could have made it taller, but that would have taken away from the aesthetics, made it look way too thick, and I didn't want that. And again, once you put this top on here, it just slides on, slides off. You can go back, put this lid back on if you want. It's not a huge deal. Here is a screen I used. It's off of eBay. I think I paid like 30 bucks for this. The model number will be on the back. I'll show you that in a second. But what's nice about this one, it has the power barrel connector over here. It's got the HDMI connector over here, and it has a head phono jack connector here, which, you know, in a case like this where it's HDMI, there's no way to get audio out easily. With this here, you can now get the audio out easily. So I'm actually better to use this screen than the 4.3, which did not have that ability. So you can see I just have it set on right here once again, just make sure everything fits okay. And I'm pretty happy with this. I needed some decals here, like some cocktails. Usually had, you know, how to play the game, or like Donkey Kong over here. And I need a coin door. That'll be in a later video. This is just really the main design of this unit. Again, just more test fitting, kind of thinking how things were going to go and flow. You can see here's the back panel I had to cut out, because when I redesigned the screen, I actually blocked off that spot I cut out for the power, HDMI, and the SD card. But it wasn't a big deal. I just basically sliced here, folded it, and it came off nice and clean. So it wasn't a huge deal, but it's definitely not in the unit. See here, this is the part I had to cut out, because when I made the new screen size, I apparently blocked this off and it was all solid. So I just cut here, and folded it, and it came right off. Piece of cake. Now here's a screen I used. It was an MPI 30508, 3.58 HDMI display. It's an 480 by 320. It's not the highest resolution, but again, it's fine for here. And here's the connector I had to trim down quite a bit. I would say probably ½ inch got trimmed down. But I am going to be using, I believe I'm using these two right here. This is 5 volts, and that's ground. That's going to power my amp circuit, which is a whole nother ball of wax. We'll talk about that in a minute. But here's where I get the audio out, which is kind of nice. I had actually a phono jack I would have put in here, but once I glued this in, I couldn't get it in. So I ended up soldering onto here. Not a big deal. It's not something coming out. But originally, I would have just plugged the phono jack right in there. HDMI, power over here. So you can see that this was probably, I would say, up to this point right here in height. So I cut off quite a bit to get it down, but I had no choice. The DB9, you can see, is right here. This, I think it's the left, the right DB9, would have been hitting on it, so it would not close at all. So it's not a big deal. Cut it down. The only thing I needed was 5 volts and ground from these two pins right here. That's really it. So you can see, this is what I had to trim out because I had to make this fit. And micro SD card slot here, power here. And when you plug this cable in, this is my screen, when you plug this cable in, audio and the screen will be on here. When you unplug this and plug it to external HDMI, it'll still go to your TV set like normal. And if you use a 2-in-1, which I do have, you can plug this in and the TV set. They'll show you later. And you can have displays going on both. No real need for it, but it's just an option you can do. I had to do it this way because unlike, a composite signal we can just tap inside, HDMI is not something you can really easily tap inside. So I had to kind of do it this way. Maybe if At Games likes my idea here and they start making their own this way, they can, have a screen inside and drive an external display as well. And you can see here I started putting some coloring on these buttons here. But overall, I'm still pretty happy with this. I put these screws on here to weight it down, just while I was adjusting everything. Didn't want the screen to come off. And here's a closer shot. I'd like to get red for the joystick, and I actually would like to get some LEDs. Maybe one LED in the back just to glow it versus being super bright. And I put some paint around the side just to make it stand out a little bit. Maybe I could print an overlay, a Donkey Kong overlay or something here. Again, that's for a different video, not what we're talking about here today, just the actual build. You see the screen's in here. It's still not glued in place just yet, just taped in, just to give me a basic idea of how everything's going to fit and go together. Okay, here's the inside. Now, it's a clean design, and again, it's a case I think they've used a couple times before. But you got HDMI, your SD card over here, power, main power switch, reset button, LED, your 2 joystick ports. And what I was really excited about, well, this here too. So there's a reset button here for the firmware, but if this thing gets screwed up, it looks like there's a way to access the device still here. You could probably flash firmware through these pins. But I was excited about over here. For my audio, I would need some way to power it. Actually, the screen needed power too. I need 5 volts for the screen, 5 volts for the audio amp. And you can see this ground in 5 volts, ground, all 5 volts. So it's all right here. Test points. I'm like, great. I'll tap right into them. So I got my soldering iron. I looked real closely. It's ground in 5 volts, 5 volts, ground. I'm like, great. Easy to get to. I was so excited. I'm like, that's better than having to try to go through this whole board, try to find 5 volts or whatever. So I took some solder. I tested it. You don't see it showing right here right now because I couldn't hold this and take a picture at the same time. It kept moving. But when I had this thing on and tested here and here, I definitely got like 4.95 volts, which should be enough, but it looks like it's not enough amps or something's not right, because when I actually touched my screen to it, it would not work. And you can see I did put the solder on here. It was all set to go. My cool. This will be a piece of cake. I got my solder on here. I like this. I'm so happy they did this. I got my micro SD jack here, 5 volts and ground over here. And you can see I have my ground wire I marked with black so I know which is ground. Like, great. I'll plug this thing in. I'll power this device up. You see it's plugged in here. I'm running the cables all the way back to here. I'm like, great. Hit the power button. Screen didn't work. I thought my screen blew up. Maybe I screwed something up. I tested the screen. Outside of this, screen worked fine. So I'm like, I put the screen on and I tested my voltmeter. I was only getting 2 volts. I was only getting 2 volts over here too. So I'm like, all right, maybe I'm not pulling enough amps. Maybe it's too much. It didn't work. So what I ended up doing first, I went right to the power barrel and pulled 5 volts from here just to make sure everything was good. And you can see ground over here, direct power from the jack, screen's on. That's great. The bad point about this is the power switch has no control over this. So as soon as you connect power, the screen's going to turn on. So I wasn't happy about it. I'm like, I got to do it that way. I'll just put a switch out here, you know, on this. But I'd rather do it from the switch. So I started thinking, hey, if I can't get 5 volts from here because for some reason the amps are not right or something's going on where when I put the screen on it drops to 2 volts, it's not enough, I should be able to pull 5 volts from here. So I'm like, okay, I'll take these 2 screws off and I'll, you know, flip this board over. And I tested. With the thing off, I got nothing from these 2 pins. When I put the power on, I got 5 volts from both these pins. I'm like, awesome. So then I went to these 2 pins, tried it, screen did not work. Tested it with the screen connected, 2 volts. So I'm not quite sure what's going on, and I would recommend, if you ever work around these cables, I was kind of far away from it, but somehow I still touched my soldering iron here and I melted this over here. Fortunately, I was able to get it working and fixed, but it's just easier. It's a zip connector here. Just pull this out, cable comes out, get it out of the way. That's what I should have did, but I was kind of lazy. Thought it was too good for my own my own brain, and I actually did touch it, but all's well, it's working. But I was disappointed that I couldn't even go here to get my 5 volts. So unfortunately, I had to go back to this method, and as soon as power is connected, the screen's going to turn on. So basically, I leave this power switch on now, and I'll just either connect it to power or put a switch back here on the cable. Some of these 5 volt, like Raspberry Pi power supplies, have a switch on it. I could just use that to turn the thing on and off. So it's not a tragedy, but it would have been nice if I could have made it a little more clean in here. Because basically, if I disconnect this from the screen and this, it goes back to stock. You would never know any modifications were done to this, which is the way I like it. So my next thing was my amp. Now, I always use stuff I have laying around. I didn't have a amp with a potentiometer on it. So I can't adjust the volume. If you have like a Raspberry Pi, these are fine because you can adjust the volume within the Pi. But I didn't have anything, and I needed to get sound. So my first problem was I didn't have the phono jack, couldn't get it in, so I hardwired that. Now this is supposed to use 8 ohm speakers. Here, these are both 4 ohms. So I tried it. Since this thing has no potentiometer, it's 100%. And this thing was hot, and then it blew, which is kind of funny. This tiny little speaker blowing up in my hand. But I did find this one over here, which I took out of its case, is an 8 ohm, but I only had 1. So I'm going from stereo to mono. Now I could definitely wire the right channel into the left channel and make it just, you know, 1 speaker. It's not a big deal. But since I have no way to adjust the volume on this right now, I didn't want to do that and risk, you know, overamping this one and blowing it out. Now, this thing's sound quality is very good. The fact I'm going through a small speaker on this amp at 100% and no way to adjust the volume, some games sound way too loud, and you know they sound distorted. That's not the fault of this. It's the fault of this and not having a way to change the volume. I have things on order, so when I get a PAM, it's called a PAM, with a potentiometer on it where I can adjust the volume, I'll swap it out and then the sound will be perfect. But again, this just, I wanted to get this done, test out the theory, see how it works. So you can see here, I end up drawing power from these 2 pins, 5 volt and ground over here. So if you unplug this cable from here and leave it inside here and unplug this cable, it's still a stock unit. But if you plug them in, you have your sound, and you have obviously your games you can play on it. This is the speaker I swapped out. This is an 8 ohm speaker, but I only had 1. I just basically cut it outside its shell. Now the shell actually acted as a like a mini boom box, so it lost its bass. But again, proof of concept was really all this is about. I could just print a thing around it to make its own boom box. But you can see here's power going in over here, HDMI cable coming out, audio amp I glued down over here. Speaker I glued on top of my HDMI double female. So I have HDMI going to this curve, to a double female, to my cable coming out to the back. And just showing how it's going to close. I mean, it slits on there just fine. All the wires, there's plenty of room in here now. Once once I did it this way, there's plenty of room inside the unit. And here it is, all closed up. The LEDs coming through, the joysticks can go in, speaker works, and there is sound. The cable's coming out the back. Here's another shot of my controllers. I do want to cut these out, put an LED behind it, make these glow. Maybe this LED is even bright enough, I don't know, to make these glow. But just another idea for another version. And just another shot of the other side. So let's get some video showing you basically how this thing looks live.
So I have to say, it didn't turn out too bad. I mean, I just started using Tinker. Well, actually, that's not true. I used Tinkercade about 2 years ago when I got the printer, but I never really got forward in it. I just kind of fell out of it. But my buddy Wagner over at Wagner's Tech Talk says, "Glenn, come on, man, you can do it." So I sat down for a couple of hours, and this is kind of what I came up with. Now, the lid here did have 3 versions of it because, again, I'm learning. But even the first version didn't turn out bad. It's just really, I didn't make these holes here for the controllers. And I originally was going to do a whole thing. I was going to make the bottom, the top, the whole spiel, take the guts out. And again, started coming to reality, realizing I haven't done a lot of 3D design yet. So I said, well, maybe I could just do a case that slides over the existing one. That's kind of what I have here, and it's a little lopsided because it's not done yet. Let's get that back on there. There we go. So I still have some things to change on it, but overall we got a screen that's on here. It's a 3.5-inch HDMI screen. I originally had a larger screen in here, so I tried it and realized the screen didn't work. It was a 4.5-inch screen, so I had to redesign it again for the smaller screen. Now I put little joysticks and buttons here on the side. The legs were the ones that came out perfect from day one. They printed and came out great. And like I said, you can put your joysticks in here. We have controls on both sides. The LED is still here on the top. Now on the back, again, it's just a quick down and dirty thing. I'm not done with the design per se, but you have access to your control port, your SD card over here, your power, and the HDMI is a cable that goes in here for the screen. Now if you unplug this, you can plug it into your regular TV set and the audio and video will come over there and this screen will be disabled. But again, for our first stab at this, I thought it was pretty good. Now I'm going to put the STLs for this up on Thingiverse. Again, there's work enough to do to it to get it to work like I did here. It's not going to be as simple as print and go. Eventually maybe I'll get it there, or it's going to be under a general license as long as you credit me with the original design. If you guys want to improve it and make it better, I welcome it. I'd like to see what you guys come up with. But what do you guys think? Do you think like At Games should take these units and make them into these little machines here? I think it'd be a hit. I mean, if I went to the store and At Games had one of these for sale for, $60, with the monitor in there and using the TV or the screen over here, I would definitely buy, 5 of them, of course. But I wish that they would do things like this. I wish companies would, when they sell things like this, take to the next level and make something like this versus a little case that wasn't But who knows? Maybe At Games will take a cue from this, and maybe the next versions of the Legends Flashback maybe will come as a cocktail table or a little arcade machine or a console versus just a generic case. But even if they don't, again, I'm going to put these up on Thingiverse. You guys can print it. Again, you will have to do work on it. This is version 1. But I'm hoping over time to improve this, and maybe as I get more into 3D printing, more projects you guys can print out yourself. But overall, I'm extremely happy how this thing came out. It plays well. The screen is pretty good. The only thing I really didn't do on here, I wish I did, again, I generally use what I have around the house, right? So I didn't really purchase anything. So the only thing on here that I wish I had done differently is the amplifier I have in here. There's no volume control on it, so it's always full blast. So the distortions you heard in here was not from the Legends Flashback. It was not. That distortion was come for this because the speaker is tiny. It's got a big amp in there, and I can't lower the volume. So in a future version, I'll put a little pod in there where I can bring the volume down to a more acceptable level. But again, all that audio distortion is not from this. It's from what I had around the house and what I built in here. But again, overall, I think it came out very well. And I want to thank you guys for watching this episode of Glen's Retro Show. If you did like it, please like, share, subscribe, tell your friends. And in my end credits, I have a lot of fellow YouTubers and companies that I have huge respect for. And if you haven't seen them, just go through the end credits and have a look at their channels or their web pages or stores. I think you'll be very happy with them. So again, thanks for watching, everyone. And remember, no matter what you do or how you play your games, just remember to game on.
at the Tiny Arcade fan page. Remember, don't admire people too much. They'll disappoint you.
Sit, Blue Blue, sit. Good dog.